Hola a todos! Hello everyone! Welcome to the 6th video in the Errores Comunes series, in which I explain how to understand and correct common mistakes that I hear from my students and see in their writing very frequently. And in this video, we'll be talking about ending a phrase with a preposition, which we cannot do in Spanish. But since we're talking about making mistakes and learning a new language, I just want to take a moment to encourage you, sigue nadando, sigue nadando. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming. When you're learning a new language, you're going to make lots of mistakes, and that's okay. Remember that it is important to spend lots of time talking in the language, communicating your ideas freely, and just expressing yourself in Spanish so that you can break past some barriers and get to the goal of speaking with fluency. So if every time you begin to speak in Spanish you're worried about making mistakes, that's going to hold you back. On the other hand, when you're working with videos like these, it's great to identify your common mistakes and learn how to correct them, because that can save you a lot of time in the long run. Trying lots of different strategies of how to achieve your goal of fluency in Spanish. Everyone is different, everyone learns differently. Sigue nadando, sigue nadando. Now let's move on to the video. And you might want to check what you know before you get started. So you'd like to have a piece of paper to write on and keep in your files. I have a free printable handout available on my blog, estudiafeliz.com. So I'll put the link to get you exactly to that handout and this blog post down in the description box. Feel free to pause the video and work on that handout, or simply try out these examples from the screen now. And now let's get on to the explanations. So as I mentioned, all of these sentences do have the same type of mistake, and that is that they end a phrase with a preposition. In Spanish, this is incorrecto. No se puede terminar una frase con una preposición. Now, we know that in English, and we'll see this with some examples, technically you can't end a phrase with a preposition either, but in spoken English, we do it all the time, and it sounds fine. It sounds correct. So much so that we might even say that this English rule is outdated, that language has evolved, and that in English you can, in most cases, end a phrase with a preposition. That said, in Spanish, you cannot. In any case, it sounds incorrect to end a phrase with a preposition. Just a quick review, prepositions are words that express relationships between other words, and here are some of the most common ones just to help you identify them. A, por, para, de, con, sin, en, hasta, entre, antes de, después de, contra, durante. All of these are commonly used prepositions. And now let's get on to our first example. So again, this sentence came from one of my students' essays, and it is incorrect. Mi amigo me preguntó quién fui al cine con. Mi amigo me preguntó quién fui al cine con. Why is this incorrecto? That's right. Con is a preposition, and we cannot end a phrase with a preposition in Spanish. But I think that the student was translating this more or less word for word from an original sentence in English. What do you think she was saying in English? My friend asked me who I went to the movie with. Yes, I think that's what she was trying to say. My friend asked me who I went to the movie with, which also ends in the preposition with. And like we said, technically this isn't correct, but it sounds fine. However, there is another structure, an alternative structure we can use in English to state the same thing without ending in a preposition. Any ideas how we could change the structure of the sentence in English? My friend asked me with whom I went to the movie. My friend asked me with whom I went to the movie. I know it sounds so formal and maybe a bit weird, but technically this is correct, and it shows us an alternative structure that we're going to apply to Spanish. The goal is, of course, to be able to produce these structures in Spanish without translating them from English, but sometimes when we're taking a detailed look at things, if there's a comparable structure we can use in English, it helps us like a bit of a stepping stone to understand things. So that's why I'm going to teach you today the correct structure in English, so then you can apply it to Spanish. So can you apply the second structure with whom to correct the sentence in Spanish? Mi amigo me preguntó con quién fui al cine. Mi amigo me preguntó con quién fui al cine. Sí, es correcto. Great. Mi amigo me preguntó con quién fui al cine. Now let's look at an example with a question. ¿Quién es este regalo para? ¿Quién es este regalo para? Regalo means gift, like a present, a gift. And what do you think? Is this sentence correct? No. Again, it ends in a preposition, para, and so we see it doesn't matter if we're asking a question or making a statement, we cannot end the phrase with a preposition in Spanish. But let's take another look at what we think this student had originally thought in English to see where this mistake is coming from. In English, I think the student originally thought or wrote, who is that gift for? How can we fix this or adjust this using an alternative structure so we don't end the phrase with the preposition? In English, we can say, for whom is that gift? For whom is that gift? How would you correct this question in Spanish? ¿Para quién es este regalo? Sí, es correcto. ¿Para quién es este regalo? ¿Para quién? Let's look at another example. And this one is a little bit more tricky, but don't worry, it'll make sense. Esta es la casa que vivía en cuando era niña. Esta es la casa que vivía en cuando era niña. ¿Correcto o incorrecto? Incorrecto. But why? Niña, the last word of the sentence, is not a preposition. Niña is a noun. Why is this incorrect? Well, notice I said we cannot end a phrase with a preposition in Spanish. And many sentences, just like this one, have more than one phrase. So this sentence has two phrases. The first one, the main clause, and the second one is cuando era niña. This phrase tells us more information. It tells us when. Cuando. So it's an adverbial phrase. Frase adverbial. Tells us cuando. Remember, adverb phrases tells us additional information that we're adding on to the main clause, like when, where, why, how. And they're even flexible where we put them. Like we could say cuando era niña at the beginning because it's not a part of the main clause. So as we see, we still are ending a phrase with a preposition in. In English, that is the house I lived in when I was a girl. So we have that is the house I lived in. That's the main clause. And we have the adverbial phrase when I was a girl. That tells us additional information. It tells us when we're talking about. And just like in Spanish, in this case, we can also switch around the order and put the adverbial phrase first, when I was a girl. And what does this example teach us? That when you're proofreading your papers and trying to work on fixing this mistake, maybe you don't need to look only at the last word of sentences, but rather on the entire structure of the sentence. How can we fix this sentence in English to avoid ending the phrase with a preposition? Instead of saying, that is the house I lived in, we could say, that is the house in which I lived. That is the house in which I lived when I was a girl. How would you fix this sentence in Spanish? Esta es la casa en que vivía cuando era niña. Esta es la casa en que vivía cuando era niña. Sí, es correcto. Excelente. Another thing I want to point out is that we could have said this sentence in a slightly different way and it would still be correct. Esta es la casa donde vivía cuando era niña. Esta es la casa donde vivía cuando era niña. That's the house where I lived when I was a girl. I include this example just to encourage you as well. Remember, sometimes word for word is not always the route we're going to take. The goal should be on translating ideas rather than each word at a time. And sometimes if you're stuck on a translation, word for word isn't working, think about how can I express this idea. Let's continue this idea of thinking of overall structures and expressing ideas and look at the name of a song I'd like to recommend to you, Con quien se queda el perro. Why am I recommending this song for you? Well, like I said, the goal is achieving fluency, being able to produce this structure naturally, and I cannot emphasize enough how great listening to music is for helping you acquire the structures and whole phrases and the way the language works in the language you're trying to learn. If you're hung up on changing structural things between languages, listening to music can really take you far. So let's look at this example, Con quien se queda el perro. As you see on the image here, it is a question. The title is actually a question. The context of the song is that a couple is breaking up, they're ending their relationship, and they're deciding what to do with their things as well as their dog. So how would you interpret this song title into English? Maybe who is the dog staying with? Who is the dog staying with? It kind of works, but it doesn't sound the best. Let's try going with the original structure, con quien. With whom will stay the dog? Oh no, never mind. That sounds terrible. That doesn't sound right at all. So that tells us this is a case where we need to avoid word-for-word translation and get more at the idea. How about who's keeping the dog? Who's keeping the dog, or who gets the dog? In my opinion, that would be a much better interpretation. What do you think? Gracias por ver el video. Of course, if you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, comentarios, preguntas, sugerencias, feel free to leave them in the comments section below and I will get back to you. Remember to check out the blog if you'd like to get the free printable handouts as well as an answer key to go along and practice with this video lesson. Gracias por ver el video. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. I'll see you in the next one. Hasta luego.